Hi everyone, Big Mike here. So a lot of you liked our Warhammer 40,000 Deathwatch tutorial, so we're going to do something new actually. Well, we're going to do a new system this time, even though it's kind of an old one. We're going to give you a quick tutorial on the core Fate RPG, as well as Spirit of the Century, which we'll be using for one of our upcoming games. Alright, so let's get to it. Now, the first thing you need to know about the Fate system, as a whole, it uses a very unique set of dice, much to the minute frustration of those of us who have to go buy new dice to make the system work. It uses six-sided dice, but rather than just using a 1 to 6 numerical value, it uses 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 zeros. So of course it means you roll based on that. You use 4 of these dice at a time, and you take the cumulative value of that dice roll. So say you've got 3 negatives and 1 positive, have a negative 2, obviously. In this system, if you get a straight 0, it counts as a very minimal success. And if you get a more positive value or a more negative value, the better your odds. Now, because of that, it seems like everything's very difficult for you to succeed. But actually, they do have something called the skill pyramid, which sounds a lot more complex than it actually is. You see, rather than putting points into skills, like you would normally in a system, you have slots. You'll have, in the core system, 1 skill at +4, 2 at +3, 3 at +2, and 4 at +1. And these are things like research, fighting, hand-to-hand, gun work, things like that. And whenever you roll, these skills apply. Now what you have in order to help you succeed or fail more in the game is 3 different things. 1, fate points, which are things you can use to spend to help improve your situation based on abilities you have. Aspects, and stunts. Now I'm going to explain aspects first. What an aspect is a small, descriptive 2 to 3 words that help describe your character. Alright? So let's say you're playing a Han Solo kind of character. A hotshot pilot would be a kind of descriptive sentence. If you're playing Tarzan, man from a forgotten land would be another descriptive sentence. Now, the idea behind an aspect, normally, is that they can both be used positively and negatively. Okay? So, let's say you're in a situation and you know that the odds are kind of stacked against you. Let's go back to the Tarzan, for example. You're outnumbered by several goons, and you know you're not going to be able to roll high enough to get that. You can spend a fate point to add +2, it's always +2 for every aspect, to invoke the aspect, which was man from a forgotten land. Now, you have to discuss with the GM, or just explain to the GM how you feel that aspect would help your character in this situation. And if the GM agrees, which he usually will, because we're all grown adults about this, you'll get +2 in that situation. Now, remember how I said aspects have to also have maybe a negative connotation too, because in order to get fate points back, the DM can say to you at any time, I'm going to invoke your aspect against you. So you said you're man from a forgotten land, right? Well, you're now in a heavy social situation. So, if I use your aspect, I'm going to make it so that any rolls you have in this situation are going to be a -2, and I would imagine it would be a social situation of some kind. But if you play through this scene and you make dice rolls with this aspect against you, you'll get fate points back for it, 1 for every roll. By default, in the core Fate game, you'll have 1 positive aspect, 1 negative aspect, and 3 more based on your backstory. So, just your ordinary background, as well as 2 of how you interact with other players. So they're meant to build the interaction with each other. Ideally, these 3 will be able to work both positively and negatively. Now, in addition to that, there's something called stunts. Now, in the core Fate book, these are described as kind of like little powers or bonuses or abilities and things like that. There are things like, let's say you have a very fast or dexterous or sneaky character, you'd want to make yourself a backstab ability of some kind. Now, Fate Core strongly advises players to build their own stunts, but there are examples within the book itself. which might be a little intense for players the first time just to build their own for superpowers and things like that, but if you have a good DM or GM and you're really willing to work it out, you can get some really good stuff. So, the next part is combat. In combat, if ever you are threatening anyone, or anyone is threatening with you, any kind of harm, be it mental, emotional, physical, social, that counts as combat. So yes, you can actually have social stress done to you in this game. What happens is, rather than it being like a specific attack stat or things like that, it's whatever stat applies to that situation. And the two players roll against each other with the appropriate attack stat and the appropriate defense stat. In, let's say, two people are having an argument in public. Now, if the attacking player gets a higher numerical value than that of the defending player, the difference between those two numbers is how much stress or damage is taken. Now, anytime you fail to completely defend an attack, you can choose to be taken out of combat. Now, if you're taken out at this point and have done nothing at all to try and absorb any of the damage or anything like that, it's very little for you to ever come back in. You're out for the scene. But you can choose to try to absorb that somehow. There's two ways: stress and consequences. Stress is damage you can take that is never lasts beyond the combat itself. So the second you're out of combat, it's gone. So it's better to try and take damage to the stress first. The problem is, all Fate players have 2 stress at start, and there are stats that can increase that stress. You have either mental stress or physical stress. This is how it is. Now, when you get that damage, whatever the numerical value of that damage was, it goes into your highest stress box. So it's not like hit points where you spend them going on. It's more like markers that you fill up going forward. So say I get hit with a value of 2. Well, my 2 spot on my stress track is filled. I don't immediately use up the 1, but if I ever am dealt 2 or more, I must take a consequence. Okay? Just how it is. However, if I still get hit with a 1 by accident, I can still take that 1 stress. Now, I mentioned consequences. If ever damage exceeds a player's stress, and the player can't somehow negate some of it down into the stress, because you can do that, I must, as a player, take a consequence. And these range from mild to medium to severe. And the higher up we go down that track, the worse it gets for you as a player. A mild consequence is a -2 across the board to whatever that consequence is. And this is a lot like an aspect that you've suddenly taken on that's negative. So let's say I had a fist fight and I could not absorb the stress at all, and I had to take a mild consequence. In this case, with a fist fight, it would be a black eye. That's a -2 now to any time that black eye will ever affect me. So that could be for vision checks, it could be for social situations, it's whatever the DM determines. And it takes about a certain small amount of time to negate that. The idea is that you can get over it over a quick couple of scenes or so. Let's say you choose to stay in the fight after all of this. Well, if you get hit again, which is likely to happen, you might take what's called a moderate consequence. With a moderate consequence, it's now a +4 or -4, depending on the situation, to all of your rolls. Okay? And this is something much more severe now, and it'll take an entire session for you to get rid of. And then it just goes up from there to severe consequences, which is now a +6 aspect that the DM can use against you. You really don't want to go any further than that, because the thing is, depending on where you decide to get taken out of the combat, the more dangerous it might be for you. So say you've been in a heavy fist fight, and now your nose is broken, your eye's been blacked out, and now you've taken the severe consequence of a broken leg. You may be beaten into a coma at this point, so you might want to choose to be taken out. So that's Fate. The other system I'm going to talk about, which uses the Fate system, is Spirit of the Century. Spirit of the Century is virtually identical to Fate from a mechanical point of view, except for a couple of things. and it's mostly on a character level and a setting level. A character in Spear of the Century is someone who was born on January 1st, 1901. So they're something that's called a centurion. So they're much more powerful than an ordinary human. You actually participated in World War I, and you're part of something called the Century Club, which is a group of individuals, not all of them are good, most of them are, who fight against the forces of darkness to keep the world safe, and you're a cool clandestine organization. Now, a centurion, as opposed to a human, to explain it at the beginning, they don't have their highest skill as a +4. Their highest skill is a +5, so you have 2 +4s and so on down the tiers. In addition to that, you have 15 skills because of that. You have 10 aspects, and none of them have to be automatically negative. And you have 5 stunts. All of this is for free. And you're encouraged to play much more high-powered and wacky and zany games, like finding the lost city of Atlantis, battling sentient gorillas, well, super intelligent gorillas, or getting in train chases across the open country and things like that. So it's meant to be a much more built-up and exciting adventure because of it. But that's actually the core of Fate. It's really designed to be very simple, pick up, go, do your own interpretation of it kind of thing. And I encourage you to try it out if you like to. Anyway, that was this tutorial video on the Fate RPG as well as Spear of the Century. Did you like it? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, like, share, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next time.